Good morning, Year 10s, and welcome to your English lesson. We're going to start off with quiz as usual. So I'm going to read the quiz questions to you, and you need to be making sure you're getting down some guesses if you are not sure about the answer. So, number 1, who kills Tybalt? Number 2, who does Romeo blame for the death of Tybalt? Bonus if you can provide the quote. Number 3, if I say the word bestow, or if I use the word bestow, what do I mean? And number 4, what do I mean when I say tug? Number 5, this is our best synonym. Thou talk'st of nothing. What is the best synonym for the word talk'st? Is it A, speak, B, shout, C, tell? Number 6, true I talk of dreams, which are the children of an idle brain. The word idle. What is the best synonym? Is it A, lazy, B, unemployed, or C, inactive? Number 7, this is our technique or meaning. It was cold, bleak, biting weather, foggy withal, and could hear the people in the court outside go wheezing up and down, beating their hands upon their breasts, and stamping their feet upon the pavement stones to warm them. Is that A, a metaphor, B, anaphora, or C, pathetic fallacy? Number 8, he had so heated himself with rapid walking in the fog and frost, Scrooge's nephew, that was all in a glow. His face was ruddy and handsome, his eyes sparkled, and his breath smoked again. Is that A, a metaphor, B, a triplet, or C, anthropomorphism? Number 9, Romeo, my mind misgives. The word misgives, what is the word class of it? Is it A, an adjective, B, a noun, or C, a verb? And number 10, by some vile forfeit of untimely death. Is that the word untimely? Is it A, a noun, B, an adjective, or C, an adverb? Can you make sure you've got some guesses down for each question, even if you were not sure? It does not matter if it's wrong, but you need to have an answer for each question. Pause the video if you need more time. Okay, so the person who kills Tybalt is Romeo. The quote that Romeo kind of runs around and who he blames for the death of Tybalt is fortune or fate. Oh, I am fortune's fool. So if you've said fate or anything like that, you can have it. This is the quote I wanted. This is the quote that shows that Romeo, obviously he knows he's the one who killed Tybalt, but it's more about the fact that he feels like this situation was out of his control. Number 3, bestow means to confer or present, to kind of give a gift to or to give something to someone. Number 4, tug means to pull hard and suddenly. So kind of not just kind of pulling, but kind of really pulling. You might have said yanking. Number 5, talks. The best synonym is A, speak. Number 6, idle. The best synonym is C, inactive. All 3 of those words are synonyms for idle, lazy, unemployed, and inactive. And if we think about the context of what's being said here, true, I talk of dreams, which are the children of an idle brain. I think lazy doesn't work as well as inactive. This idea that if your brain is doing nothing, it's dreaming, or it will start to dream. This technique here is pathetic fallacy. It's where the weather is reflecting the mood. It's from the beginning of A Christmas Carol. Number 8, and we've got a triplet here. He was all aglow. His face was ruddy and handsome. His eyes sparkled, and his breath smoked again. Those kind of 3 things. Romeo, my mind misgives. The word misgives is C, a verb. It's a doing word. To misgive means to kind of misunderstand or to be unsure about something. By some vile forfeit of untimely death. The word untimely is an adverb. It's describing a verb. Okay, your title for today is, we're doing another exam question today. We're going to do it slightly differently to last time, mainly because we do not have 2 lessons. We only have the 1 lesson. So, this part of A Christmas Carol is best for showing how much Scrooge has changed and been redeemed. So this is an interesting one. This is where we have a statement from a student having read an extract of Christmas Carol, and it says, starting with this extract, explore to what extent you agree with this statement. So if we look at the exam question itself, it says, read the following extract from chapter 5 and then answer the question that follows. In this extract, Scrooge has just encountered the charitable gentleman he has met the day before. My dear sir, said Scrooge. So we're looking at this extract. These are the charity men, the charitable portly gentlemen that he met the day before. And this is him meeting them in stave 5, where he actually pledges them quite a substantial amount of money. And in this part of Christmas Carol, is the student having read this says, basically, this moment in Christmas Carol is the best for showing how much Scrooge has changed and been redeemed. So how much he has changed and been redeemed. And we're going to see if we agree or disagree. So the scene is, and remember, I'm going to read it. Now, as I'm reading it, you might want to be jotting down the quotes that you would use. Remember, you need 3 from the extract. "My dear sir," said Scrooge, quickening his pace and taking the old gentleman by both his hands, "how do you do? I hope you succeeded yesterday. It was very kind of you. A Merry Christmas to you, sir." "Mr. Scrooge?" "Yes," said Scrooge, "that is my name, and I fear it may not be pleasant to you. Allow me to ask your pardon, and will you have the goodness—" Here Scrooge whispered in his ear. "Lord bless me," cried the gentleman, as if his breath were taken away. "My dear Mr. Scrooge, are you serious?" "If you please," said Scrooge. "Not a farthing less. A great many back payments are included in it, I assure you. Will you do me that favour?" "My dear sir," said the other, shaking hands with him, "I don't know what to say to such money for—" "Don't say anything, please," retorted Scrooge. "Come and see me. Will you come and see me?" "I will," cried the old gentleman, and it was clear that he meant to do it. "Thank'ee," said Scrooge. "I am much obliged to you. I thank you 50 times. Bless you." Pardon me. Okay, so a student having read this says this is the best moment to show that Scrooge has changed and been redeemed. Now, these are the 3 different kind of chunks I would look at. Sorry. If I was taking this. So what I'm going to do is what I did last time. I've highlighted what I would select. I'm just going to annotate it the way that I would in preparation for writing my answer. So, a Merry Christmas to you. I've selected this because it directly contrasts with Scrooge at the start. You'll remember he said anyone going around with a Merry Christmas on their lips should be boiled with their own pudding and have a stake of holly put through their heart. So, again, even as an English teacher, this is something that my year 10s are always saying to me is that, well, of course you know it, you're an English teacher. Yes, and yes, I have read, this means I've read Christmas Carol numerous times. Does that mean I know every single quote off by heart? Absolutely not. So I'm straight away just thinking about the fact that it's very different, and I'm just going to put in this quote about holly through his heart that I might use just to make that comparison to show how much Scrooge has changed. That Scrooge believed people who go around with a Merry Christmas on their lips should have these things done to them. And I'm just putting in quotes that I know are at least really close, if not identical to the text, rather than worrying necessarily about knowing bags and bags of quotes off by heart. So we've got this direct contrast with Scrooge at the start, because he went around saying that people who say Merry Christmas should have holly through their heart. I fear it may not be pleasant to you. This idea that Scrooge now cares about what people think. Again, very different to the start, and I can use my quote. I feel like this is going to be a really interesting question to answer because, yes, we're going to have to talk about the extract in our answer, but I feel like to really answer to show that he's changed and been redeemed, we are going to have to reference other parts of the text. And that's going to mean that straight away, when we're in the extract part of our argument, in the extract part of our writing, we're going to have to mention elsewhere, which means we are straight away not going to be limiting ourselves by only talking about the extract or only talking about elsewhere. So I might look in particular at the word fear here. Which is, here it's a verb. It means he's kind of worried. Okay, lovely. My second quote then, or the second argument I might make, is around this. Not a farthing less, a great many back payments are included in it, I assure you. So this idea of him being charitable, again, very different to the start. If we think about this idea of back payments, This is a noun. This is a noun and just kind of informs us that he's kind of trying to make up for when he's not been charitable. And again, very different from the start of the novella where Scrooge doesn't want to give to charity. I could maybe think about quotes I could use, including are there no workhouses? And he asks about the poor law as well. I could maybe mention that as some good context. Because remember, you need to make sure you're mentioning context. You're mentioning what the world was like in Dickens's day. And then my final quote here, don't say anything, please. So here we've got this. He doesn't want thanks, showing that he's selfless, which is obviously at the start he was selfish. So this is a really good point in the text to show that Scrooge has changed and been redeemed. So what I've done now, so remember you need to draw your planning grid. Now remember there are two ways of doing this planning grid, and rather than forcing you all to do it the same way, I'll just show you the two different ways. So you can do it this way, so this is where you'd put the question, your introduction, this is where we'd put our information about the extract, and this is where we've put our information about elsewhere in the novella. Here is the other way where we have like introduction, conclusion, bit in the middle. Whichever way you do it, pause the video and create your planning grid ready to start filling it in. Okay, so your introduction basically needs to address whether or not you agree that this moment where he gives the charity men all of this money, this moment that we've just annotated kind of together and looked over, is this the best moment to show that Scrooge has been redeemed? Do you think this is the moment that you can go, yep, that's it, he's redeemed, he's totally changed, this is the best moment for it? Or are there other moments you think might potentially be better? And if there are, what are those other moments? And that could be thinking about your elsewhere. The next thing to think about is your conclusion. Now, I always like to think about my conclusion before I necessarily start writing anything and before I start filling in my grid, because essentially what should happen is your introduction should kind of outline your general argument. These are the things you're going to talk about. I like to pick 3 that you're going to maybe talk about, and you might talk about more than 3, but in your introduction you mention the 3 key things you're going to discuss. Then in your conclusion, you need to decide which one of those 3 is the one that you truly believe. So when do you think the best moment is that shows Scrooge is redeemed? Could you just, on your own plan, add your introduction and your conclusion? So do you agree this is the best moment? Are there other moments? So even if you think, yes, this is the best moment, you need to maybe tell me about some other moments or what other people might think is the moment Scrooge is redeemed, just to make sure that you're not going to just talk about the extract. And then also in your you need to think about your conclusion. When is the best moment that shows Scrooge is redeemed? Pause the video to complete this task now. Okay, lovely. So this is kind of how I would fill it in, and how I would tackle this question. So I've not filled in all of my quotes or too much detail. So the reason I've done this is that I want you to develop your own plan. Now your plan might be different to mine. You might use my plan as a springboard. But last time, before you started writing, I gave you a full plan to use. I don't want to do that this time. What I want to give you is kind of the bare bones of a plan. And really the expectation is that you complete that. You add the detail that you need to write an answer. So you can see here, I've said I don't agree. I don't agree this is the best moment to show that Scrooge is redeemed. And this is my personal opinion. I personally believe that the moment that Scrooge is truly redeemed, the moment that Scrooge truly changes, if we were to say that there is a point in the novel where I go, right, that's it, there it is, it's the moment that Dickens says, and Tiny Tim's Tim who did not die. Now, the reason for that is that this is the moment that I see some concrete evidence that Scrooge didn't just change for Christmas Day and then go back to normal. This is the moment that Scrooge... That's the moment that's followed by this big description of Scrooge being as good a man and as good a master as the good old city ever knew. Until that point, I see it as he could change back. He could do all this on Christmas Day and then be like, well, there we go, I'm done, and go back to being exactly how he was. To me, I'm personally someone who needs to see evidence. I need to see some kind of proof that what you're saying is true. So for me, the moment that it says Tiny Tim who did not die, that's it. That's the moment. That's the extract that shows that Scrooge is really changed. Other examples of people have disagreed with me. I've had many a debate with many a Year 10 class about when Scrooge is changed. Some people say that it's around the concern for Tiny Tim. So when he's with the ghost of Christmas present and he kind of asks about Tiny Tim dying, and the spirit says, if he's going to die, he better do it and decrease the surplus population. And Scrooge feels ashamed that he said those things. Some people say that's the moment that Scrooge changes, because after that moment, when he goes to the miners and the lighthouse and the ship, and then he goes to Fred's, he really is engaging with the Christmas spirit. He really is enjoying Christmas. And that's the moment he's changed for some people. Some people have argued that it's the moment he starts acting on his words. So when he buys the turkey for the Cratchit family, that's the moment, because that's the first thing he actually does, where he actually takes all of what he's been saying about, oh, I'm going to change, I'm going to be a better man, and that's the moment he actually does something about it. So those are 3 different examples of when people could say about him changing. So in my 3 extract paragraphs, I'm going to talk about the way Scrooge speaks to people and his attitude to Christmas and how it's changed. I'm going to therefore be talking about elsewhere. I'm going to talk about the beginning of the novella, but I'm going to focus on the fact that this text, this extract, is showing how much Scrooge has changed, because this is what it was like and this is what he's like now. My second point for my extract paragraphs is going to be about his willingness to donate to charity. I'm going to talk about how that's changed. I'm going to talk about how he wished to be left alone, how he told the charity men that he didn't wish to donate anything, he wouldn't let poor Bob Cratchit have any coal for his fire, all that kind of stuff. So again, remember, I'm going to talk about elsewhere a lot, and that's fine. In fact, as long as I'm talking about the extract and elsewhere, I'm doing the job perfectly. And then finally, I'm going to talk about Scrooge not expecting any thanks or praise. This idea that he's gone from being selfish to selfless is going to be my final paragraph. Then for my elsewhere, I'm going to talk about those 3 examples that I came up with, aside from the extract, that show that Scrooge has changed. I'm going to talk about Tiny Tim who did not die, that declarative statement, and I'm going to talk about that's the evidence that Scrooge's change has worked. I'm going to talk about the concern for Tiny Tim, and I'm going to talk about when Scrooge buys the turkey. So I've given quotes, kind of, but the expectation is that you kind of fill in this plan with more detail so that you are ready to write. Now, as I said, this is our final Christmas Carol lesson. So once you have done that, I want you to get writing. Now, I understand that this has been quite time consuming, and you might be looking at your clock and thinking, wow, this is going to take me more than my 55 minutes for an English lesson. And I totally understand that. However, the bare minimum that I expect to see you writing, so when it comes to me and Mr. Ponsford looking over people's work to see how much they're producing, for this lesson you should have a completed plan, you should have your introduction written, 1 paragraph about the extract, 1 paragraph about elsewhere, and your conclusion. So the bare minimum I should see is 4 paragraphs, a small introduction, a small conclusion, and then 2 big paragraphs. 1 big paragraph for the extract, 1 big paragraph about elsewhere. Remember, you shouldn't be using just 1 quote for your paragraphs. So I want you to be, I've given you kind of 1 as kind of a base point. You need to build on that. You need to find other quotes that you can use. So 4 paragraphs is the absolute bare minimum. If you really care about kind of doing well and working hard and really improving your essay writing skills and your arguing and your English essentially, then I would expect to see a full essay regardless of how long it takes, regardless of if you have to spend some extra time on it. I'd want to see the full essay, but bare minimum is 4 paragraphs. That should include fully analysed quotes. That should include your introduction. Make sure as well, if you're going to have a conclusion that is different to mine, make sure that what you talk about in your conclusion you have talked about either in your extract paragraph or elsewhere. So if you think that the moment that Scrooge changes is this kind of conversation with the charity men, then you need to make sure that you make that clear in your introduction and your conclusion. You don't want to just put something together that doesn't make sense. Your introduction should kind of line up, these are some of the main arguments. Your conclusion should say, of those main arguments, this is the one that I personally believe. So if your conclusion is different to mine, then you would maybe not do this paragraph. If you think it's this moment, then you do this paragraph instead. But you need to make it clear. So your argument needs to still work, even though you're only doing a couple of paragraphs for this lesson. Okay. You should now have your plan completed, or you should have done your plan. And what I've got for you here is some sentence starters for you to use. So you can pause the video while you complete that. And once you have finished your 4 paragraphs minimum, I cannot stress enough that that is minimum, then that is the lesson over. And thank you for all of your hard work.